All right, so in this video, we're going to take a look at how when you want to implement some kind of code, how do you implement it on our PYNQ board. So first of all, you want to create a project as usual. So we'll go through this, call it whatever you want. We'll call this one implement. Sure. You can add your sources if you want to. So here I'll add my sources. So I will use a clock divider for this one. I want to also use a counter, and yeah, sure, we'll start with these two. And then we'll go on. So now here it's going to be different. You're going to want to add a constraint file. Your constraint file you're going to find on It's Learning. So you'll just have to download it and then place it somewhere where you can find it again. So I've placed mine in a folder here, and it's going to be in .xdc file. You're going to want to add it, and then go to the next one. Here, it's also going to be different. Here you want to find your boards, and then you're going to choose the board that we're working with, the PYNQ set 2. Yes. Yes. Okay, move on. All right, so what we want to do now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to combine the clock divider with a counter, and then we're going to try to create a counter on the LEDs on the board that just counts up just around every second. Now I'm just going to skip ahead until I've made the block design. All right, so now I have the finished block design. This is what we're going to be trying to implement on the board. So now that we have this one, we're gonna we need to take note of what we've called our external ports here, and then we're gonna go into the configuration file now. I've now opened my my constraint file in the editor here, and now the first thing that we want to do is we want to take a look at the clock. To enable the clock, we're going to want to, you can see here, clock signal. Then we want to enable the clock here. Yes, and then we want to, of course, set the names to the same as you've called your clock. Now, what we also wanted to do was we wanted to take the, we had a vector called counter in our diagram. I think I have my diagram here. Here, and then we can see that we want to then take the different elements of a vector and then map them to our LEDs. So we're gonna go for the LEDs here. Now you want to outcomment all of the LEDs that you want to use. We're gonna want to use all of them since we have a 4-bit vector. And then since our output is called count, then we want to also here say count. Okay, so now we've mapped our output ports to our actual board. The next thing that we actually also want to do is we have the clock. We might also want to somehow enable a reset and then enable on our board. So one good opportunity to do that would be to use the switches. So, or not the switches, the buttons. We have 4 buttons on our board, and so we're just going to want to enable 2 of them. So we outcomment these 2. And then over here, we want to say one of them is going to be the enable, and the other one is going to be the reset. Yes. So we're going to want to save our configuration file, and now in principle, hopefully, fingers crossed, it's going to work. So we're going to try to, over here, we have some different steps before we can actually put it on the board. We're going to go through the synthesis, the implementation, and then we're going to, at the end, we're going to create a bitstream and load it onto our board. If you don't want to specifically look at the different steps, you can look at some simulations along the way, but you don't need to. Then you can just press generate bitstream. Then it's going to go through all of the steps, and then maybe if we're lucky, then we're not going to find any mistakes. Yes, here you can choose how many jobs to use. That depends on your computer. The more you use, of course, the faster it's going to run. My computer is slow, so I only have 4. Probably some of you are going to have 16 or something. But don't use all of them. That, of course, is not a good idea. But I'm going to use 2, and then we're going to try to run our program. All right, so now the bitstream has finished being generated. So we can then open the hardware manager. Here we go. And then from the hardware manager, we're going to choose to open our target, our board. All right, so now that you need to open the hardware target, you press here and you press auto connect. Make sure that your PYNQ board has been turned on. Now that it's finished loading, you can now see that it's open. You have connected to your PYNQ board, and then you will press program device, and you will load the bit stream onto the PYNQ board. Press program. Then I'll switch over to my camera to show you the PYNQ board working. All right, so now I've loaded the program onto the board. The things you want to be aware of when loading the program is, first of all, this USB cable here, you want to put it in here. And then to turn on the PYNQ board, you can turn it on and off with this switch here. Another thing is there are 2 jumpers on your board. There's this jumper down here that you want to have on JTAG, and then this jumper up here that you want to have on the USB. So now that I've loaded the program onto the board, in my case, this button here is set to be the enable, and this button here is set to be the reset. So if I hold down the enable, as you can see on my block design, then the counter starts counting up with roughly 1 Hertz. And then if I release it, it stops counting, and if I press the reset, it resets the counter. So now I've taken the block design from my computer and put it on my board.